First, I would like to say a few words about my uncle, Michael Hoffman, whose estate it is, the donation that Stephen mentioned. My uncle has escaped in a rather dramatic circumstances from the communist Poland just after the war. And I think the story of his escape would have made a great copy, as Monique would put it. Or a script for Hollywood maybe. So I'm sure that if he had known that we are going to have an award thanks to his estate, he would bless us all for doing that. In fact, he wouldn't be alone blessing us, because as I went around trying to find where I would find a place for this estate of my uncle to transform itself into an award, and Kurt came to mind. I contacted Sabina. Then, when the Kurt Schork Memorial Fund accepted, I started telling my friends around the world that the award will be there, and my Bosnian friend said, "Koniečno." My French friend said, "Enfin." My Arabic friend said, "Ahiran," and everybody who speaks English said, "Finally." That's what we've been waiting for. This award is long overdue, and we should be proud of ourselves, and we should feel ashamed it didn't happen any earlier. I think that they are very much unsung, and we will try to have them a little bit sung by this award. The reason why I feel that maybe I should be speaking about it is because I knew Kurt. We worked as colleagues in Bosnia and Kosovo together, and I could see how much he appreciated fixers that he worked with and fixers of other people. I cannot call Kurt a fixer, but his presence next to me in this armored car as we were going down the road, and we knew that they were looking at us. And I knew 3 words of Albanian and maybe 100 words of Serbian, and he didn't know those. My 103 words may have made a difference, but his presence there just made me relaxed about my 103 words that I knew. I also can speak about the Kurt Schork Awards because I have been wearing many hats on my short hair. I have been a local journalist from my native Poland. I have most of my life been at Freelance, and most of the places for which I worked would be rather miser on the expense accounts. But I also was a staff writer at one point, and it was very cushy. And I have been a fixer many times, both in Poland and in other places. In Bosnia, my fixing was quite appreciated, not because it was so good, but because the thugs were so bad. And because the ethnic lines between the Bosniaks, the Serbs, and the Croats were so strict that taking any person who was of one of the ethnicities was quite dangerous. So suddenly my ratings got up, and I was going there. And it was especially true when once we went with the journalists from the New York Times, Washington Post, Voice of America, NPR. I was then a staff writer at the New Yorker, but I didn't use a fixer. One of the above mentioned 4 men decided to take a Bosnian translator through the front lines into the Serb territory. It was a whole day and night at gunpoint, waiting for them to decide whether we were all spies, or only the men were spy, or only the Polish woman was a spy. Anyway, the changing of fixers was not a very convenient thing, so fixing by a Pole was appreciated. Dante Alighieri in the Divine Comedy had a fixer, Virgil. In Hell, and in the purgatory. When he wanted to go to heaven, Virgil, being a pagan, didn't make it, so Beatrice made it. Maybe this is the gender that Monique was speaking about. Anyway, war reporting is not ever heaven. I'm sure that those of you who are journalists, and there are many here, know what a fixer is and what the fixers do. For those who are not journalists, family, friends, and things like this, you may remember the film called The Killing Fields, which was probably the first glorious way of recognizing the role of fixers. Pran-Dit was the fixer en question. The fixer who was the hero of this film. Stephen Schanberg was the New York Times writer who was fighting for the freedom of his fixer. We are speaking about Cambodia, 1975, the Khmer Rouge. The more recent story, which I happen to have been involved a little bit with, is the widow of Stephen Vincent, who was a journalist, a freelance journalist working in Basra in Iraq, and he was killed in 2007. His fixer at the time, Nur al-Khal, was injured. She got a shot in her leg, and it was the widow, Riza Ramachi, who came to International Rescue Committee where I was working, and she made the incredible efforts to get Nur into the United States. She did, and Nur found a job, then lost the job, found a job again, etc. Speaking of which, I would like to mention that when the Danish contingent left Iraq, they took every single Iraqi translator, driver, cook, and whatever, and their families, airlifted them, gave them a political asylum, taught them Danish, and the rest is history. The United States had opened a special quota for the journalists and the trainers. I think a monthly acceptance rate at the time when I was writing about this for mainstream media and bumping against plenty of problems was 1 a month, I think, and not with families, and everybody who has ever paid any ransom in Iraq was accused of being terrorist according to the Patriot Act, against which I spent 5 years fighting. Didn't win. Another incredibly inspiring story is closer to me. My very best friend, Mark Epstein, now the head of the foreign desk at L'Express in Paris, and Jean-Paul Guillotot, his photographer, were arrested in Baluchistan together with Kawar Mehdi Rizvi, who was the fixer. Mark and Jean-Paul spent a week in prison. Kawar was not released, and Mark has undertaken an incredible campaign to free Kawar, having himself been freed a week later. I was deported from Cuba just a week before, so my interest in the whole family being out of prison was particularly acute. In 2007, there was a very unfortunate case that may have come to your attention. It was Ajmal Naqshbandi Ajmal. He was the fixer for the reporter from La Repubblica, Danilo Mastergiacomo, and Danilo got released, being exchanged for 5 Talibans, whereas Ajmal and Sayed, who was the driver, were not exchanged for anyone. Sayed was killed and Ajmal was beheaded. Um, this led my friend John Lee Anderson to launch the idea of a fixer fund, which has nothing to do with these awards, but I'm mentioning it that some people did see the fixer's fate. In this case, it's a fund that helps the families that stay behind and with the funeral costs, etc. I will be speaking with John Lee to see if there's any things that we can do together. The last story that I know about of fixers is Mohammed Rasool, who was working as a fixer for Vice, the American publication. Two British journalists were immediately released from detention, and Mohammed Rasool was held, and now he has been released on bail in January 2016. The case is that it happened in Turkey. The two boys are British, and Mohammed is Iraqi. So, but those above are the famous cases. There are many, many unfamous cases, and if I opened my Rolodex or my iPhone, I would probably come up with plenty of my friends having worked as fixers at some point or other. I don't think that they would like to be mentioned because very often fixing happens in countries where thugs and dictators, some of them with medical ophthalmologists, for instance, degrees, run the place. In other, there are former heroes such as Comrade Robert Mugabe or Comrades Fidel and Raúl Castro. They are really former heroes who run the place. So fixers in those countries prefer to be anonymous. I would therefore not mention the names, but the fixers that Steve spoke about being local reporters, the ones I know are mostly non-reporters. I have a little list here. A guitar teacher from Crimea, a biologist from Republika Srpska, an accountant and his brother environment specialist in Yemen, a nurse in Sarajevo, an economist in Rangoon, a filmmaker in Venezuela, a plumber in Albania. He spoke 4 languages fluently and could quote Dostoevsky in Russian, and a truck driver in Grozny in Chechnya. Let's take Duško. Duško lived in Bielina. He spoke English. He was Serb from Republika Srpska. He spoke English. He had a battered red Yugo that was falling into pieces but moved around. His mommy baked wonderful chestnut cakes. And he knew everybody. He knew the war criminals. He knew which war houses the war criminals went to, so you could wait outside the war house and get some pictures if your newspaper needed them. He was giving quotes. He knew the checkpoints. He knew how to bribe the checkpoints. He knew the local numbers of people. At the time, the mobile phone wasn't yet so very famous. And I really defy any foreign reporter who doesn't speak the Yugoslav language, as it was called there, and to be on the safe side, who did not use Duško or did not take his views or his safety instructions and eat the chestnut cake of his mommy, which was very good. Just a few notes on the profession or the calling, on the function of the fixer before I finish. I think that in the world of instant contact via Facebook or with Facebook users via WhatsApp or whatever one uses, I have plenty of those applications. A foreign journalist is even more challenged to have the local knowledge because the WhatsApper who may not have the credentials will be quicker, so the journalist needs to really know his stuff, and the fixer is absolutely indispensable. The second thing is that I think Sarajevo, which Kurt knew so well, is one of the last conflicts that I can think of where you could really say where each side is standing, as opposed to the shifting and impossible to foresee safe or dangerous places. And it is now even more important than before to have a fixer to whom you can turn as the shooting starts and the artillery goes off, as was the case 3 days ago for me outside the Donetsk airport, and it started really very, very noisy, and we had to get out, and I knew that the local person would know. I wasn't myself very reassured with the military man telling us to go this way, and I followed the bartender. She was a bartender. Tiotia Katia is her name. I still have her phone. Anyway, the other importance is that given the fatigue with the conflicts, the copy has to be better and better. And for the copy to be better and better, the foreign reporter comes and writes about it, but it cannot be done without the local fixers. But the fixer himself cannot, or the local reporter, not knowing if you're writing for United States now and you don't know that Trump is as dangerous as artillery in Ukraine, almost, then you cannot write for this audience, because half of America thinks he's a great guy. Almost half. We think not entirely half. So the reporter and the fixer working in this symbiotic coexistence, I think, is something that will stay with us and is guaranteed to flourish. I do hope that the Kurt Schork Memorial Fund will be getting the nominations that will help us to sing the glory of those unsung heroes. And I just wanted to add that we should be optimistic, although when I went to see the exhibition called The Sunken Cities today, I handed them my press card and they gave me a ticket, and the ticket says, "Press Sunken." I hope it's not true. They just, thank you very much, thank you. Thank you.